Why is grammar important? Why do you think grammar is important in this task we have of interpreting Scripture? If you had to define grammar, would
I was
you?
just gonna ask.
Yeah, I know. Well, in your own words, like what would you say grammar is? If you try to introduce it to someone like who's a caveman, like what grammar is. Hard one, huh?
I mean, it's kind of like a set of rules to create a sentence.
Yes. Yeah. It's a set of rules that we follow to communicate. And this is why I gotta write this down. So, what do we believe in? This is a term we always use. And we throw it around like it's nothing, right? But they always say we believe in the historical, grammatical, literal interpretation. Right? You ever hear that? What do we believe here? What do we believe in Reformed evangelical churches? We believe in historical, grammatical, literal interpretation of the Scriptures. You ever hear this? And if you hear that, that's a good thing. Very good thing. But do you know what they mean when they say that? No idea. Well, let's break it down. What's historical?
History.
Yeah. What we just talked about. What did you just study when you did your background?
Yeah, the history of their time, their day.
Yeah, so we believe that in order to interpret Scripture right, you need a historical and cultural understanding of when it was written. That's what this means. Check. Grammatical. That means we believe that the words and sentences and paragraphs are defined for us in a grammatical fashion that follows a certain set of rules which help tell us what it means. That's why grammar is so important. If you don't know what a word is doing, how can you understand it? If you don't know how it's operating in a sentence, how can you really interpret that sentence? Right?
Yeah.
That's why this is so important, this is so important. And literal, we know what literal means, right? We take it as it is. The simplest meaning is its meaning. Right? I don't need to go through crazy analogies or secret meanings. It means what it says. It's a literal understanding. So that's what it means. Okay, not so difficult, right? We believe in the historical, grammatical, literal interpretation of Scripture. And that's why grammar is super important. And that's what we're going to learn. Okay, and we're going to start with the noun. What's a noun?
Person, place, or
Person,
thing.
place.
Excellent. See? Grade school coming back. All right, so a person like Jesus, a place like Ephesus, a thing like blood, a concept even. That's a little more confusing to people. Because redemption, grace, blessing, and even an event. So even though to ascend is a verb, the ascension is also a noun. The ascension of Christ is to be seen as an event. Okay? All right. A noun has 4 primary characteristics: person, number, gender, and case. Now, this is in your notes. That's like keep that handy. That's going to be like your cheat sheet of grammar. And I would encourage you, if I say anything that helps stick out, this presentation is available already online. So if you need that, it's in PDF form. I could also export it to you in PowerPoint or any other
if you want this particular PowerPoint for yourself. So I don't want you necessarily have to write everything down, but if you hear something that's helpful, then go ahead and jot it down. But I put that down for you so you won't have to do too much. Okay, so person, number, gender, case. We're going to walk through this, okay? So person, right? Person, there's first person, which is I. Second person, you. Third person, he, she, or it. Is that new to anyone? Or is that pretty standard? Okay. So if you see a 1, 2, or 3, you know what it means. It's kind of self-centered, right? Number 1 is you, was I. Number 2 is you. Number 3 is. Okay. So now number. Pretty simple, only 2. It's either going to be singular or plural. Okie dokie? So good so far. All right, gender. Unlike society today, there are not 5 billion different kinds of genders. There's really masculine, feminine, and just in case there is one that is absent of gender, it's neuter. Okay? For words, there's masculine, feminine, and neuter. And just to be clear, just like Spanish tends to assign masculine and feminine to certain nouns, so does Greek. So just because something is assigned masculine or feminine does not necessarily mean that they're gendered. So you'll find that, and if you see a feminine for something that weirds you out, because does that mean God's a woman? No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean, it just means they're assigning that particular word. Where it does matter is where you begin to match words together. And knowing that the genders are the same for like an adjective and a noun, it'll help you tie those things together. Because the adjective will have the same gender as what it modifies. Does that make sense? So that's why this is important.
Why do they even assign genders? I mean, what's the significance of?
It's part of the language. It's just part of the language. Sometimes it clearly does matter because it's clearly masculine or feminine in terms of where it talks about he or she, about people. Mm-hmm. But other times it's assigned to ideas and it gives it a he or a gender to it. And that doesn't matter as much. It's just philosophically, when they created the root word, they just attached a certain gender to it. Okay? We'll see some examples. All right, so person, number, gender, case. Okay, this is the more complicated one. All right. There are 5 cases. Nominative. It operates as the main subject of the sentence. That's super important. Okay? Whenever you see nominative, think main subject. Genitive, it communicates of something or possessive. So whenever there's ownership, like son of God or anything of another. It's weird because we have the apostrophe S to show possession. In Greek, it's literally always of that thing, like of the apostles or of the Spirit. So, and our is considered of mine, of ours, right? Accusative, it's the object upon whom the action is applied, which is also called the direct object. The dative communicates to something, which is called the indirect object, and vocative, it communicates an address, like brothers. So this is, I know that doesn't mean much, okay, to you. These are already confusing, but the best way to remember is simple sentence. The boy, we're all talking about the boy. The boy is the main subject, so he's the nominative, okay? So the boy is the nominative. Threw, that's the main verb, because the subject did something. Threw, what did he throw? The ball. And remember, accusative is the object upon whom the action is applied. So what did they throw? The ball. So we know that's accusative. So you find these out by asking the questions. So you'll just ask, who's the boy? He's the main subject. That's why he's nominative. What did he throw? He threw the ball, so we know that's the accusative. Okay? But the ball is described. It's of yarn. It's a ball of yarn. So genitive communicates of something, right? It describes the ball. It's a ball of yarn. So the yarn is genitive. And the last, he threw the ball of yarn to the girl. Dative communicates to something. So to the girl here would be a dative noun. Okay? So if you memorize that simple example, it'll help you put these into order. Okay? All right. Stop me if you have questions. No questions. Okay, we're going to do an exercise. All right. Identify the nouns. What are the nouns there?
Son.
Okay, the son.
Disciples.
Okay. Son. Disciples.
Word.
Word. Any others? Yeah. Okay, let's start with that then. Boom. The Son. God. Word. Disciples. Good job. Identify the case of each noun in the sentence. Okay? Son. What case is that? How does the noun the son operate in the sentence?
Nominative.
Yeah,
Nominative.
and how come it's the nominative?
Because it's the main subject of what the sentence is getting to.
Yes.
Talking about.
Right.
The sun.
You'll always know it's the main subject is because you find the verb and say who's doing this, right? The main verb here is clearly spoke. Well, we're gonna find out who the main noun is. The main subject is if you say who spoke. The son did, right? So good, nominative. God.
Genitive?
What is it?
Genitive?
Yeah, why?
Because it's of God.
Yeah, of God. Describes who the Son is, right? He's not just the Son, he's the Son of God. Genitive case. All right, word.
Dative
Okay, read to me what dative is.
communicates to something. Oh, to the indirect object.
Or called the indirect.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
is the word to something? I guess it would be if it was spoke to the word, but it means he spoke the word. So it's not dative.
Accusative.
Accusative. Why is it accusative?
It's the word that. So the word is the object upon the action. So spoke.
Yeah, so who received the action?
The word.
The word.
Mm.
What did he speak? He spoke the word. So remember the simple sentence. The boy threw the ball of yarn to the girl, right? So the ball. That's the accusative. Same here. The Son of God spoke the word. Make sense?
Mhm.
So if you always compare it to that simple sentence,
Yes.
you'll get the right one. And then disciples. Now we're looking. Right? What is it?
Yeah.
Dative. Because of to, right?
I was looking at to the girl in this last one. Dative.
Now it's called an indirect object because the word is the one that's being that's receiving the action. But then in that sentence, the boy threw the ball of yarn. That's a sentence. You could end it there, right? That's a full sentence. The boy threw the ball of yarn. But then now he's saying that it goes to someone. So even though this is the direct object, it's going to an indirect object, right? He's throwing the ball of yarn to the girl. So the ball being the direct object, the girl being the indirect object. Make sense? I think I confused you more. Let's unravel that. Does that make sense why this is called the direct object? And disciples would be indirect. Does that make sense? The direct object is always the thing that is receiving the action. The indirect object is that what if it's to something else after the fact. Because the disciples aren't they aren't directly receiving. Well, this maybe go back to the boy. The ball is the one being acted upon, right? The ball is being acted upon, so that's why it's a direct object. So the disciples are the one that's receiving. Yeah, I don't want to confuse you more. So the word is the one that is most direct to the verb. And if there's one after that, that would be the indirect object. Does that help? So the first one is always direct object. The second one is always indirect object. Okay. I don't want to confuse you anymore, so I'm going to move on. So good job with the exercise. All right, pronoun. A word that substitutes for a noun, referring to items named or items that are understood. So there's a personal pronoun. I, you, he, she, it, we, they. Nothing new there, right? Relative pronoun. Who, which, that, what. Now these are important. When you see a relative pronoun, think of describer. I have Jonathan in my class who is being baptized this coming Sunday. I don't think it's this Sunday, but
It is.
Is it this Sunday?
Oh, right.
Right? Okay, so I said, what did I say? I have Jonathan in my class. So that's the main sentence. And then I said who.
Yeah.
Once you see the who, that has nothing to do with the main sentence. It all is describing someone, right? Who? Jonathan, right? So you can actually take anything with the relative clause and take it away and realize that's just a describer of one of the nouns. So that's why it's important, because you're going to see this all the time. Like Paul likes to use, all the Bible writers likes to use relative pronouns. And so they'll say who, and they'll run on for verses and verses and verses. But you can't miss that all it's doing is describing whoever it's pointing to. It's just one parenthesis. Think of a relative clause. That means it begins with a relative pronoun. That it's all pointing to somebody or something. And so you can actually rip it out and look at it later. And it'll still make sense. In my sentence, I have Jonathan in my class. That's a sentence. And it can stay that way. It can stop. But when I say who is being baptized next Sunday, it just gives color to who Jonathan is. So remember that that's the function. Right? That's the function of a relative pronoun and a relative clause. Stop and ask questions if you.
If I recall, the scripture has a lot of these.
A lot.
A ton.
A ton of these. And they are so very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just remember, just so it doesn't confuse you, that it points back to some sort of concept or some person. I mean, I can think of Ephesians and Colossians where they use a relative pronoun who and run on just all about Jesus. Now that's the whole point, is he's describing Christ, but then you have to go back to why is he describing Jesus? Go back to the main sentence, right? An intensive pronoun, that just always points back to self, himself, herself, themself, okay? And then a reciprocal pronoun, which means two parties benefit. So one another from each other. Okay? Any questions on pronoun? Okay. All right, here's an example. Ooh, here's a little taste. You see some Greek there. Woo! Yeah. Okay, this comes from Bible Hub. That's one of the websites that you can find Greek parsing for free. Now let's do the same thing, okay? Let's take note of the parsing of the nouns. Okay, which ones are the nouns?
Fullness,
Fullness,
deity,
deity. And that's good. Right there, huh? Now this one is also a noun, personal pronoun. So still considered a noun. Okay? Now, we're going to look at these. Let's look at the nouns more closely. Okay? Him. All right, so I decoded it here. Okay? So PPRO, that just means personal pronoun. Right? D, dative. So notice that it's followed a preposition. So to him or in him. Right? So it's dative. Masculine. So it is him rather than her. And then third person singular. What's a third person?
Deity?
What's a third person? First is I. Second person is you. Third person is
He, she,
it.
it.
So that's why it's him.
Oh no.
Make sense?
do the.
It's not them. It's singular, masculine. Third person. So it's not I or you. It's a he. So for in him. Okay? Any questions on that one?
Do the dative nouns, is that right? The dative nouns, are they usually preceded by a preposition? Is that usually
Often.
the case? Okay.
Now, in that sentence, the boy threw the ball of yarn to the girl. The dative was to the girl, and I said that dative is usually to something, but that's if it's the indirect object. When it comes to a prepositional phrase, it kind of stands on its own. A prepositional phrase is like, it's same deal as what I said before. It's describing something. So the in him is describing something. You think about any prepositional phrase. Where's the keys? Under the box. Where's the cat? On the table. Right? It's telling you something about a subject, right? Where are the keys? On the table. Okay? So that's what. Now in a prepositional phrase that has in, under, it can be dative, it can be genitive. It's usually one of those two. It's usually dative or genitive. So don't let it throw you. It's not always going to mean throwing a ball to the girl. The other way it's used is used in a bunch of different prepositional phrases. In him, under the cloud, over the moon. All right? Good question. Let's look at the second one. Fullness. Now, fullness, it's a noun there, and it said NNS. So N for nominative, which tells us what?
That's the main subject of the sentence.
Whoa, that's weird. Did you ever know that? There's the main subject of the sentence. If you want to know what the sentence is about, it's about fullness. The main subject is fullness. What's the only verb in this sentence? Dwells. So what's this sentence about? A sentence, all the sentence needs is what?
The noun, verb,
What's the shortest sentence you can make? In the Bible, the shortest sentence, I think, is like, Jesus weeps. What makes that a sentence?
Noun and a verb.
Yeah, subject and its verb. Well, there's a whole lot of things that confuses us here, and we need to kind of wrap it down to its roots. So what do we need? We need the main subject and the main verb. And then we know what it's about. This sentence is about fullness dwells. That's what it's about.
it's weird, it's right there.
Isn't that interesting? What is this sentence trying to tell us? It's telling us that fullness dwells. That's what it wants to tell us. And we're going to get to that. So I think I skipped forward a couple. But all right, deity. Signaled by the of, right? So genitive. So noun, genitive. Now this, don't let this throw you. Feminine. That's just the description of deity. It doesn't mean God's a woman. Okay? It just means the idea of deity. They assigned a feminine gender to it for some reason. And singular. All right? So which now is the main subject sentence? We found that out. It's fullness. And what is the main sentence then? Fullness dwells. Now, this is what we do with sentences. You need to get to the bare message of what a sentence is saying. So now we have the bare message, fullness dwells, but now we fit in everything else. Well, the for tells us that it's talking about because of something, so it said this tells us to look above. He's referring to something above. But then it says in him. So where does the fullness dwell? It dwells in him. And then of deity. What is this modifying? How is this phrase being used? It's describing the fullness, isn't it? You can tell because it's close to it.
Is it that possessive?
Yeah. Or describing here.
Genitive.
What kind of fullness is it? It's the of deity kind. So, fullness of deity. And then an adverb describes what? We're going to talk about that. What's an adverb describe? Verb. What's the only verb?
Dwells.
So it tells us how it dwells bodily. So here's the main sentence. I'm skipping forward a little bit into phrasing or into diagramming. But look, this is the main sentence, right? Fullness dwells. That's the main idea. But now we feel, well, what kind of fullness? Well, it's the fullness of God. The fullness of God dwells. Well, how does it dwell? Where does it dwell? It dwells in him. How does it dwell? In his body. That's what this sentence is saying. See, doesn't it help simplify this whole sentence to see that this is what is being said? Right? This is why this is helpful. Yeah? No?
Yes.
How are you feeling? Getting me, or is this like...
it's a lot of this, but.
Alright, I just need to know you're all still with me. See, when we can get to the bare sentence and then let all the other things that describe put where it belongs, then we can get the main idea quickly. Right? I'm not distracted by the sentence. I know exactly. This sentence is telling me about the fullness of God dwelling in Christ. That's what it's trying to say. And if you didn't do this, you might get a little confused. You might think, bodily is the main idea, or fullness is the idea. But the main thing is fullness dwells. Okay? And we're going to see more of this next quarter. That's just a little taste, using what you know already about nouns.
Are we gonna be tested on this?
No. But that's why I have your cheat sheet. Keep your cheat sheet with you. And here's the thing. You need to know that sheet. And by the end of this class, all 3 quarters, you shouldn't even need it anymore. You should be able to look at something like this, read this, and say, I know what that is and I know what it's doing. You should be able to look at any of these. Well, nouns, at least now. You could say nominative, nominative, neuter, singular. Genitive, feminine, singular. And know what that means. Okay? You guys need a break?
A cookie break?
Is a break needed? You okay?
I'm okay.
Okay. We'll go, so that's it. So that's it for verb. Tense, oh no, that's all for nouns. So we're done with nouns. All right? Nouns and pronouns, done. Verbs, big one. Here we go. What's a verb? It's an action word, okay? Right? Now, verbs have 5 primary characteristics, and we're going to walk through each one, okay? Tense, voice, mood, person, number. Okay, let's look at tense. All right. Oh, I didn't put the thing. This is present tense. Should have still been there. Oh, there it is. It comes in later with my animation. So present tense, I run or am running. It's a continued action. If this was right now and this was time, it's this, crosses the line. It's happening now and continues. Okay? It's helpful to keep this picture in mind when you're thinking of tense. That's why I have the graph there. Okay? Stop me, ask questions if anything comes up. All right. Here's this one. Future. I will run. It's a future action. So it's past now. Sometime in the future, something will happen. Honestly, it could be this or this, depending. It could just be a simple thing that happens in the future, or it could be continuous in the future when you talk about future. Okay? How about this one? Imperfect. I was running. So you know what? I have examples here. Let me go back to these examples. So present tense. Okay? John 3:16. So for God so loved the world that he sent his only Son, only begotten Son, that whosoever will believe in him will not perish. Well, that word believing is present tense. So that it's better translated, so whoever, the ones believing in him, will not perish. So it's not a one-time thing. It's not somewhere in your past or somewhere you just say it once that you believe in Jesus and that's it. It says, to the ones believing and continue to believe, they receive eternal life. So that, I think sometimes we read it that way and say, oh, it's just a moment. No, it's continuous. It's a description of these people. They are believing people, continually believing kind of people. Okay? That's the power of the present tense. Make sense? For future, this is Paul talking about those that are preaching out of pretense. They have bad motives against him, but they're preaching. And he says, what? I rejoice. Present tense. I am rejoicing right now. And then he says, and I will rejoice. He's saying, in the future, I'll rejoice. And I think the idea here is he'll continue to rejoice in the future. So that's the power of the future tense. Okay. All right, and then we talked about, this is where we end, imperfect. I was running. So this is past time, but with a continued action. So it's continuous. It's like taking the present tense, but putting it in the past. So I was running. So Ephesians 2:3. And we were by nature children of wrath. That is an imperfect tense. So it's better understood. And you were being by nature children of wrath. You were continuously living as those who are children of wrath. Doesn't that help you understand that verse a little bit better? It's better than just saying were, right? It's there was a continuous action of you living like that. Okay? Make sense? Any questions? Give me a nod if it's okay. Yeah.
So you're saying that, so the being part,
Yeah.
that's the, I'm kind of like, you're saying it'd be better if that was in that path? I'm confused kind of.
It gives better the idea that reflects the Greek.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
Greek is imperfect,
Okay.
which means it's a continuous past. But in the English, they just said, and we're by nature children of wrath. But that doesn't give the idea of continual, right? So in order to give if you want to be wooden literal, it doesn't read as well. But if you want to be literal to the Greek, you would say, and we're being by nature children of wrath. That gives you, or we're continuously by nature children of wrath. That helps give this idea
Okay.
of that tense,
That's way better
right?
than my English version.
Yeah, and you're going to find that as you are looking at grammar. But the English version that you have is very, very good. We're just giving it a little bit more color based on the original language that may not be as apparent. So be confident in your English translations. Don't down it, and don't down on that to other people.
Yeah.
See, guys that have taken the language, that can be a tendency. We could say, oh, it's better translated this way, but we got to be real careful. I would say be very careful the way you portray that to people, because they want to have confidence in their English version, and the English translation is actually very, very good. This is just helpful when we get into the roots of things and give more color, just a little bit more description than they're able to give. Because if they were to do this, it would read really weird. If they were to do this all the time, it would read very awkwardly.
Yeah, because we don't speak like that.
That's right. We don't say, and you were being by nature, so we don't say that. But it helps us if we're to describe this verse and teaching it to people, it would be helpful to say, look, what he means is that we were living like that continuously. It's not like we did one thing. It's not like we did one sin. It's like we were always being children of wrath before. So it helps give color to what the verse is saying. So be very gracious when speaking of the English translation, and just know that you're just getting more color as you look at the grammar. All right? Good question. All right. This is aorist tense. So present tense and aorist tense are the most common tenses. So aorist tense is a simple action in the past. So I ran. usually past time in a point in time. Ephesians 2:6, and raised us up with him and seated us with him in the heavenly places. Now, it doesn't always emphasize this, but here we can say it's a simple past tense, but it also speaks of completion. He did it back then and it's done. He raised us and seated us, and there's no more having to be done with it. It is completed. Right? And that's a beautiful thing. You right now, consider that. You right now have already been raised. You, even at this moment, are already seated in his mind. It's already a done deal. You are already in the heavenly places with him. Finished action. Done. Nothing more to be done for that to be true. Isn't that sweet? Now, we won't always be that dogmatic about a simple action, but here we can be. The past tense means something. All right. Questions? No? Okay. Ooh, this is a good one. You don't see perfect tense much, but when you do, it means something. When you see perfect tense. So it is, I had run. It's a completed action, so seen by a dot. It's done, but it has ongoing results. Finished, but because of its being finished, it has effects ongoingly. And John 19:30 describes this when Jesus says, "It is finished." He's really saying it has been finished, and it has effects for all the future. Isn't that an understatement? When Jesus cried that, he says, I'm done, yes, but because I've done what I've done, you're never going to be the same ever again. It's going to have effects for your eternity because it is finished. That's the power of the perfect tense. So you don't see perfect tense a lot, but when you do, it usually means a whole lot. Okay? And then we have the pluperfect. This is like the unicorn. You never really see pluperfect. I think this is the only one I could find. So it's I had been running. It's a completed action in the past which had results up to a certain time in the past. So dot to dot. So it's from here to here in the past. And the only one that I could find was Luke 16:20. And a poor man named Lazarus was laid at his gate. Now the word was laid is in the pluperfect. And it's actually translated literally had been thrown. That's weird. Had been thrown at his gate. Now that's a term. This phrase is a term used for people who are confined to bed through illness. And what's beautiful with this is had a start but an end. Because remember the story that Jesus speaks of this man in